Our topic is multiplying decimals by whole numbers and decimals. Let's solve this question. 0.02 multiplied by negative 14. But in order to solve this question, we need to follow some steps. First, we're going to multiply it without the decimal points. So 0.02, we take out the decimal point, so we'll get 2 multiplied by negative 14. Then we'll get negative 28. So we can't forget the decimal point yet. We need to add it to our answer here, negative 28. So as you know, there were 2 digits after the decimal point. So this is actually referring to 0.02. So there were 2 digits after the decimal point. So therefore, we need there must be 2 digits after the decimal point in the answer as well. So how are we going to do this? This is a decimal point. So now there must be 2 digits after the decimal point. So we're gonna move it on the left side 2 times. 1, 2. So our answer would be negative 0 point, because the point landed here, 0.228, negative 0.28. So this is the answer. Let's solve this together. 3.2 multiplied by negative 0.04. So as usual, you need to multiply it without the decimal point. So when we remove the decimal point from 3.2, we'll get 32. And when we remove the decimal point from negative 0.04, we'll get negative 4. And when we multiply it, we'll get negative 128. Now it's time to put the decimal point back in the answer. So there were 3 digits after the decimal point. How? Because after this decimal point, there were 1 digit, which was 2. And after this decimal point, there were 2 digits, which are 0 and 4. So in total, we've got 3 digits after the decimal point. So our answer here is negative 128. So there must be 3 digits after the decimal point in the answer as well. So we put our decimal here, and then we have to move to the left side 3 times. So 1, 2, 3. Our decimal point ended here, so our answer is negative 0.128. Now for the next question, we need to use a written method to solve. 5.96 multiplied by 0.35. So we're gonna multiply it without the decimal points first. So when we remove the decimal points from 5.96, we'll get 596. And when we remove the decimal points from 0.35, we'll get 35. So 596 multiplied by 35, you'll get 20,860. So now it's time for us to put the decimal points back. So there were 4 digits in total after the decimal point. So they're referring here. So after the decimal point of 5.96, there were 2 digits, which were 9 and 6. And then for 0.35, there were also 2 digits after the decimal point. So in total, we've got 4 digits after the decimal point. So there must be 4 digits after the decimal point in the answer. So how are we going to do this? as usual, we have to move this decimal point to the left 4 times. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and it landed here. So our answer is 2.0860. Now, how to check the answer? By using estimation. So this was the question here, and now we have to round these two numbers into one significant point. So when we round this 5.96, we'll get 6, and when we round 0.35 to one significant point, we'll get 0.4. And when we multiply these both, so 6 multiplied by 4 is equals to 24, but as there is one digit after the decimal point, we're gonna there must be one digit after the decimal point in the answer as well. So we move the point to the left, and our answer here is 2.4. So 2.4 and 2.0860 is pretty close. So our answer is probably correct. Now I will give you some questions and I want you to solve it mentally. And I will be giving the answers in a short while. You can pause the video if you want. Let's move on to the first question. 0.1 multiplied by -9. So first you multiply 1 by 9, we'll get 9. Now there were one digit after the decimal point, so there must be one digit after the decimal point in the answer as well. So our answer therefore is -0.9. So we cannot forget the negative here, and there is one digit after the decimal point. Let's move on to the second question. 0.6 multiplied by 0.7. So you forgot about the decimal point first. We're gonna remove that. We just multiply 6 and 7 first. We'll get 42. But then we need to add the decimal point also. So there are 2 decimal points in the question in total. So there is one digit after the decimal point and another one here. So in total we've got 2 digits after the decimal point. So we have to move this decimal to the left 2 times. And when we do so, we'll get 0.42. Let's move on to the third question. 0.4 multiplied by -9. So as usual, we're gonna remove the decimal points first, and we multiply 4 multiplied by -9, we'll get 36, but in negative. And now there is one digit after the decimal point, so we have to move this point 1 time, and our answer therefore is -3.6. Let's move on to question 4. 0.3 multiplied by 2. So 3 multiplied by 2 is 6, and as there is one digit after the decimal point, which is 3 here, we're gonna move this point here to the left only 1 time, and therefore our answer is 0.6. Let's move on to question 5. 0.9 multiplied by -4. As usual, we're going to remove the decimal point. So we've got 9 multiplied by -4, and we'll get -36. But as there was one digit after the decimal point here, which is 9, so there must be a digit after the decimal point in the answer as well. So here's our point, and we have to move it to the left one time, and we'll get negative 3.6. So as you can see, there is one digit after the decimal point in the answer as well as in the question. So we have to make sure that the number of digits after the decimal point must be equal in the question and the answer. Let's move on to question 6. 7 multiplied by 0.5. So we remove the decimal points from the 0.5 and we'll get 5. 7 multiplied by 5 we'll get 35. And now it's time for us to put the decimal points back. So there was one digit after the decimal point, which is 5 here. So there's one digit after the decimal point. So there must be a digit after the decimal point in the answer as well. So how can we do this? We just move the decimal point one time to the left side and we'll get our answer, which is 3.5. Now let's move on to another question. You can try to solve this question too. So there are 4 questions here and the answer are actually here. So you have to see which answer will match the question. So you have to see and you can match yourself too. I'm going to give you a while so you can answer. Okay, let's answer the first question. Negative 6 multiplied by 0.03. So we remove the decimal points from the 0.03 here and we'll just be left with a 3. But we can't forget the digits after the decimal point in the end. So we've got negative 6 multiplied by 3 and we'll get negative 18. Now it's time to put the decimal points, the decimal point back. So there were 2 digits after the decimal point, which was 0 and 3. So it doesn't matter what number was after the decimal point. How many digits were after the decimal point is what matters. So there were 2 digits after the decimal point. So there must be 2 digits after the decimal point in the answer as well. So we move the decimal here to the left 2 times. 1, 2. So our answer is negative 0.18. So it's here. And this is the answer for number 1. Let's move on to number 2. Negative 18 multiplied by 0.001. So we remove the decimal points from the 0.001 and we'll be left with only 1. And then we multiply it by negative 18. Do you remember that we have to give our answer in negative here? So negative 18 multiplied by 1 will get negative 18. But we can't forget the decimal point. So there were 3 digits after the decimal point. So there must be 3 digits after the decimal point in the answer as well. So we move the decimal point 3 times to the left. 1, 2, and 3. So our answer would be 0.018. And this is our answer for number 2. Let's move on to number 3. Negative 20 multiplied by 0.9. So here we remove the decimal point and we'll be left with 9. And then we have to multiply the 9 with negative 20. So first, to solve this, you can just multiply the 2 and the 9 first. We'll get 18, but we can't forget the 0 because of the 0 here, and we also cannot forget the negative sign. Now there were only one digit after the decimal point, so there must be one digit after the decimal point in the answer as well. So we remove the point one time to the left and we'll get negative 18.0, but since 0 has no value, we'll just write it's negative 18, the answer for number 3. Let's move on to number 4 here. Negative 9 multiplied by 0.2. So we remove the decimal point from the 0.2 and we'll be left with 2, and we multiply it by negative 9. So negative 9 times 2 is 18, and we can't forget the negative here. So there was one digit after the decimal point, so there must be one digit after the decimal point in the answer as well. So we move the decimal point one time to the left and we get negative 1.8. So this is our answer for number 4. Omar does not understand why 0.3 multiplies 0.3 is 0.09 and not 0.9. So can you help him understand by commenting down below? Let's move on to the next question. Mary works out that 45 multiplied by 62 is equals to 2790. So by using this, you need to answer the questions here. I'll be revealing the answers in a short while. The answer for number 1, 45 multiplied by 6.2. So you don't really need to work out the answer for all of this. There's actually a pattern I'm going to tell you. So they have given you that 45 multiplied by 62 is 2790, and now they are asking you 45 multiplied by 6.2. So what is the answer? It is 279. Why is that so? Because they've just divided it by 10. See, it was 62 here, but then they divided it by 10. So we're going to divide our answers also by 10. So we remove the 0 to give us the answer for the question number 1. Let's move on to question 2. The answer for question 2 is 227.9. So 45 multiplied by 0.62. It will give us the answer 27.9. It's the same as the first one. It's just that now we are dividing 62 with 100. So when we divide 62 with 100, we'll get 0.62. So we're gonna divide the answer up here with 100 as well. So 2790 divides by 100, which means that we're gonna move 2 times to the left. We'll get 27.90, but since 0 has no value, we aren't going to write it. Let's move on to question 3. 4.5 multiplied by 62. It is 279. It's the same answer as number 1, because 45 here, 45 which was in the question, has been divided by 10. That makes it 4.5 multiplied by 62. So we are going to divide 2790 with 10 as well. So we just need to cut out the 0 when we divide a 2790 with 10. Let's move on to question 4. 4.5 multiplied by 6.2. So as you can see here, 4.5 has been divided by 10. 6.2 has also been divided by 10. So there are actually 2 digits after the decimal point in total. So there is 1 digit after the decimal point in 4.5, and there is 1 digit after the decimal point in 6.2. So there are 2 digits after the decimal point in total. So there must be 2 digits after the decimal point in the answer as well. So the answer is actually 27.90. You can just divide 2790 with 100 and you'll get 27.9 because we're gonna add up 4.5 and 6.2, so they're divided with 10. So we divide 2790 with 10 first, so we'll get 279, and then we divide by another 10 and we'll get 27.90. But since 0 doesn't have any value, we're just going to cut it and we'll get the answer 27.9. So I want to ask you a question. From your understanding, why do you think the answer for number 1 and number 3 was the same, and why the answer for number 2 and number 4 was the same? You don't need to comment down the answer below. You can just think about it. That's the end of the lesson. If you've learned something new today, please subscribe the channel. Thank you.